Hi, I'm Marta. I'm a yoga teacher, a breathwork facilitator, mentor, and a space holder. Out of all these roles and titles, I think I resonate most with space holder. I like to think about everything that I do as offering an opportunity for another person through giving them space, or giving them room to come in contact with themselves. I don't feel that I teach anyone anything or that anyone in fact teaches anyone anything. It seems like we're all just inviting one another into this place of remembering. All the practices that I personally engage in, all the practices that I share, I feel really beautifully facilitate exactly that, this sense of coming home back into the body, remembering how good it can feel to live in your own body, remembering what it means to be in alignment, mind, body, heart, and remembering this much larger aspect of yourself that helps you start relating to life as actually everything is happening for you. How can you utilize what's happening to live your best life, to thrive? And so within that, the role of a space holder is a beautiful privilege, actually, to be there with another, to be there for another human, and to share this togetherness of our journey home. This quote by Ram Dass, we're just walking each other home. I think that's a beautiful analogy to a role of a teacher of any kind, to just be there and walk with another. I was born in Poland. I lived there for the first 18 years of my life, after which I felt like must get out, which today I understand is really needing to run away from trauma, from patterns, from beliefs, from traditions that at the time felt very imprisoning. I lived in England for almost 10 years afterwards. However, I never really felt at home, and I always traveled and I relocated, and I had a spell of living in Brazil, and I would move as much as I could. I was always searching for something in a place that ultimately today I understand is actually what I needed to find within myself. That home that I was yearning for, that's here. I discovered it to be here, that at first I was externalizing and looking for in communities, circumstances, geographical locations, etc. I spent a few years living in India, which was a very powerful and important part of my journey of stepping into the role of a yoga teacher, of deepening my own sadhana, of finding my spiritual teacher there, of really diving into my practice in a completely different way that I knew yoga to be from London, from the Western world. And I have also spent the last 3 years living in Peru. There was something about South America that really resonated with my soul on a very deep level. And when I began to explore plant medicines and began to surround myself with indigenous communities, had the privilege to sit in very traditional ceremonies, tiny little pieces began to form into the grand puzzle of me understanding I really needed to be on this continent. So I have lived in Peru for the last 3 full years, and I am coming to a completion of this journey here. I will be moving away and moving closer to home, which for me also feels like a testimony to the work that I have really been doing on myself, actually yearning to be closer to my roots rather than must get as far away from here as possible. But this is also a very special place that has massively contributed to my growth, to my offering, to who I am today as a woman, as a practitioner, as a teacher, as a partner, as a friend, as a daughter. The deeper understanding of myself thanks through the practices and gifts that I have been offered here in South America through plant medicine healings, through simply living here on a land that's vibrating so highly, exposing myself to a very different way of living, different traditions, different customs. And just in the same way as India contributed to me completely changing who I am, I think Peru has made quite a contribution as well. So it's very beautiful to be here now and recording this for you actually from a land that's one of the most powerful places that I've ever experienced in the world. And I think if you haven't been to Sacred Valley, once you arrive, it becomes very clear why it is called Sacred Valley. I have been on this journey for 7.5 years. I have probably one of those experiences that can be very shortly summarized as yoga saved my life. I started practicing yoga when I was, I think, 14 or 15, but it was only really when I was getting clean and I was leaving a life of addiction and really very dark place in my life, that the depth of this practice essentially allowed me to recreate my way of living from scratch. And so for me, yoga is very fundamentally linked with who I am and with how I want to live life, because it played such a huge role at the very pivotal time in my own journey. And what it gave me at the time and what it continues to give me is an invitation and an opportunity to keep coming back into my body. And with addiction, I think many people can relate. Our main intention is to get as far out as we can. And so the tools that I started to explore and the practices that I began to engage in allowed me to start relearning what it means to live in my body again. And for these 7.5 years, I have gone on a journey from being a practitioner, being someone who really depended on this practice because I felt that without it, I just cannot breathe, to someone who stepped into the role of a teacher and stepped into a role of wanting to share the gifts that I have received based on my own experience of how transformative this can be. And I find it fascinating that there is this very deep resonance between yoga, between these ancient teachings from, completely different side of the world, and what's happening with the shamanic learnings and plant medicine healings, and how both of these paths that have kind of nothing to do with each other say exactly the same thing. Everything that is within us that's unmet, unprocessed, and acknowledged over time will cause us illness, whether physical, whether mental, or whether that's an emotional disruption that just doesn't have an outlet. The few years of the active addiction that I experienced were, for me, a very tangible, very palpable way of trying not to feel everything that was bubbling up within me. I was trying not to think about childhood trauma. I was trying not to think about pain that I was in. I was trying not to acknowledge the complete disconnect from my body. I was moving away in this very dramatic, aggressive way from this division within myself that was so clear, but it's easier to not acknowledge it rather than start looking within, digging within. And so when I did get clean and when I dove into the practice of yoga, I suddenly found myself in this arena of self-inquiry, which at first was very intimidating. And so what I resonated with at first, at the beginning of this journey, was a very fast, very strong practice. I could feel the purification that these asanas were giving my body, this opportunity to energetically recalibrate myself. I could feel in the space of quietness that so much was starting to arise. And I, for a long time, had experiences of, doing a 60-minute, 90-minute yoga practice and then just weeping at the end of it because so much was moving. But these first few years when I was really dedicated and practicing every year, for me at the time were all about fire, 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 practice strong, use this practice to commit to your path, discipline, purification. And I guess that's what I needed at the time. But what I found eventually is that the practice was a space for me to perpetuate my habits of being very strong towards myself, being very harsh, being very critical, being very disciplined, being very masculine. And because my journey was one of needing to reconnect with femininity and reconnect with what it means for me to be a woman and essentially come back into a place of softness, into a place of self-care, into a place of connection with who I really am without trying to change it or wanting it to be otherwise, I started to see the imprisonment in the practice and began to explore it from a completely different perspective. And I feel that this is where the true depth of yoga really opened up for me. And this was also at the time when I began to work with plant medicines, which by nature for me have always invited me deeper into myself and into more subtle layers of who I am. And these two combined have taken me on a completely different journey. And I truly began to move away from asana, movement, strength of the practice towards the more subtle, more ethereal depths that this can facilitate for us. And I found and continue finding in my own practice and the way I teach that this is where the gifts reside. This is where the true wisdom of yoga awaits us. When we let go of the superficial, when we choose to sit, be still, and open ourselves to what is in those watery depths of stillness and the kind of yin quality of this practice. So I can really speak to an evolution in how I see yoga within myself, within the way I teach. I teach completely differently today than I have done maybe 4 years ago. I really honor what I feel is boundless capacity of yoga practice to bring us truly back home into the heart. And sure, at first for a lot of us, including myself, this journey means actually dropping from here down into the body, learning how to use the body. I think many of us are completely disconnected, so we don't even know what's left side, what's right side, how to move. The simplest cues can take us, out of balance. But eventually, this transforms into a platform where we're invited to be with ourselves. And within this, I found for myself a true communion with who I really am. And this beautiful marriage for my practices between yoga, between the Eastern philosophies. I do a lot of kind of Chinese medicine inspired practices as well, and I explore a lot Chinese medicine in the way it looks at energy, body, at meridians, at illness, psychosomatics, etc. Together with plant medicine, has allowed me to understand myself from the perspective of my energy body. Yoga has drafted this fantastic sketch of I am energy. I have these main energy centers. If there is something within me that doesn't have an outlet, that I'm not willing to acknowledge, that has been pushed aside for many years, that's not integrated, then by default, the energy that doesn't have an outlet over time will cause an illness. I very quickly in plant medicine realms started to explore exactly the same themes. Wow, I am holding something here in my liver. I'm holding something in my right hip, diving into those somatic felt sense sensations and exploring emotions locked in my body. Finding this powerful interrelationship between a deeper understanding of my physical and a contact or communion with the subtle, and how both these two paths allow me to get to know myself in a completely new way. Within that, I find fascinating that ancient Chinese philosophies, that, sadhus in India thousands of years ago and indigenous healers in the Amazon jungle speak exactly to the same thing. You need to get to know yourself on the level of your energy. You need to let go of your mind and feel what's within you, to liberate it, to let it go. I have spent 3 years living in India, almost 3 years, and this was a very powerful period for me as a student, as a teacher, as a practitioner, because really in India I got to see firsthand that yoga is a way of living. It's not just some form of physical movement that's meant to help us lose weight or get a little bit more flexible, but it is actually a path that if we commit to walking can take us to a whole new way of living life, to a whole new way of relating to life, because we get to know ourselves so much better, so much more intimately. And without maybe criticizing and without judging, but as a reflection, what is happening in the Western world that is sold as yoga often, unfortunately, has very little to do with what this practice gives and looks like at its root in India, or what it was meant to be when it was first transmitted and given to the people, tens of thousands of years ago. I think it's very special that these teachings, these practices have been passed on orally at first, that the teachings have only been written down very recently. So we are coming in contact with something very ancient, something that in this tradition is seen as given directly by the gods to allow humanity to find their way back into divinity. Yes, we are in this embodiment, but the invitation continuously over and over again is there to remember you're actually a soul having a human experience. This is not who you are. Who you are is so much larger than that. So don't attach to the mind. Don't attach to your physical body. This is all impermanent. This will all keep changing. Explore who you are underneath those layers. That's the beauty of this practice. So sure, I think this can be a beautiful entryway for everyone to come to your gym and get the taste of the physical, and suddenly you stand on your head, or suddenly your leg goes where it's never been before. But I invite everyone to see it as an entry. This is the gateway to what this practice can really give you. And on the other side of the physical, or maybe underneath the physical, the superficial, is the real gold, is the wealth of what we get to explore. I think it can be very fascinating for people, also very shocking to feel themselves as energy for the first time. To notice, wow, okay, I'm vibrating, I'm, something is tingling, or to bring their attention to one point in their body, to close their eyes and notice that the body starts to respond. So in meditation and in pranayama or in breathwork, which is another modality that I work with a lot, we get to do exactly that. We get to move down from the head into the body and open to the subtle. This somatic language through sensations is always there. Our body is continuously communicating with us. I mean, it's a living consciousness. It knows that we're talking to it, and it talks back to us. And for so many of us in the Western world, this is exactly the medicine that we need. To learn how to live in your body. And when you get a headache, when you get a knee pain, when you have a weird twitch, rather than popping medication or watching Netflix or trying to, eat some chocolate to numb it or to not feel it, to sit with it, to say, hey, body, okay, my neck feels really painful. What could it be about? What in my neck, what in my throat am I not expressing? Am I not acknowledging? Am I not meeting? That my body has to make me acknowledge by causing physical sensations. Breathwork is something that I started to share this year. I have done a training with, I believe, who is the pioneer of this practice, David Elliott, and I have right away, actually ever since having my first session, felt this incredible familiarity with the practice, just the same way as I felt about plant medicine, as I felt about yoga. Space where I just lay down and I use an active 3-part breath to open my energetic body, therefore to open my emotional body. In yoga and psychosomatics and energy medicine, we speak about the emotional body being underneath the energetic. So we first need to open energetically to dive into the emotions. And so in this space of simply laying down and using an active breath, I suddenly have a capacity to feel myself expand, to notice the places where perhaps in my physical I am holding, to feel the uncomfortable or to feel the dense or the tense, and to consciously take my breath there. So rather than acting on the autopilot of this doesn't feel comfortable, I don't like it, must do something about it, fix it, to actually meet it with love, meet it with acknowledgement, meet it with, okay, this doesn't feel very comfortable. Let me take my breath there and explore what's underneath those sensations. For me, breathwork has been so revolutionary because in the era where we are constantly looking for fix outside of ourselves, looking up to teachers, gurus, things that we have to ingest or things that we have to smoke or things that we have to do to fix, to heal, to change, there's actually this simple medicine of breath. You are just inhaling and exhaling and coming in contact with the depths of your being, really exploring your inner landscapes and having a choice. Okay, I take the role of my own healer. What does that mean for me today? How deep do I want to go? Do I want my spirit to guide me and perhaps show me where I'm holding myself back, or take me to a place of my highest potential and show me the inspiration for how I want to live and relate to life from here onwards? So breathwork is something that I personally try to bring to people as much as I can. And ever since doing my facilitation training, I've been really focusing on hosting circles and working with people one-on-one, because the simplicity of this practice, I think, is the most shocking medicine for all of us, really. I don't want to speak for everyone else, but for most people, it's, very revolutionary to notice that you actually don't need to take anything from outside of yourself. You don't need to listen to anyone from outside of yourself. You can just be your own healer. You can just be your own medicine and find answers, find alignment, find inspiration, find a whole new way of relating to yourself from this place of everything that I need is already within me. I am just remembering my way back to wholeness. There's nothing wrong. I am already whole. I am already perfect as I am. This is how good it feels to be me. This is how good it feels to be in my body. This is how good it feels to breathe. I started working with plant medicine when I was already clean for a few years. And this was an interesting period in my life. I was doing a lot of work on self. I was going to therapy. I was digging deep. But it felt like I wasn't quite hitting something that I needed to express or that needed to be acknowledged within me. It almost felt like, yes, I was engaging in all these tools and practices, but not quite getting where I felt intuitively within me I needed to go to really open up to life again, to really move away from my story of trauma, of addiction, of everything that's happened in that space of addiction, and actually fully be me again, live my life at my highest potential, thrive, feel nourished. And so eventually, after a while, I started to sense that there's something more. There has to be something more. And one night I had a very powerful experience. I was visiting my grandma, and I, in the middle of the night, woke up from a dream in which I received a full memory of a suppressed memory from not so much early childhood, but around 12 years old. I completely forgot about this happening in my life. And yet when it was 3 a.m. and I just woke up from remembering, everything made sense. All my choices as a teenager made sense. All my desperate running away from myself and my body made sense. My deep discomfort at being me, at living in this body, the urge to get out through substance, food, sex, alcohol, you name it. It suddenly all made sense. And I spent the rest of the night crying and sitting with it and feeling so deeply disturbed by the sudden memory. And the only thing that came to me in this kind of dawn of remembering was, I must drink ayahuasca. I have no idea how really that came upon, because at the time I was going to 12-step recovery meetings, which are very strict, very clear. Everything is a drug. You must live in a certain way. I was very much indoctrinated in that. And it saved my life, yes. But at that point, I found myself at a split of the roads where, yes, I'm living clean. And yes, this is deemed as a substance by the people that I'm surrounded by. And yet this is the one thing that my spirit is telling me I have to do. And the interesting thing was that a few days later, I was starting a couple of months work in Europe at a place. And when I arrived, I was just sharing with the manager this whole download and what happened to me. And we were speaking a little bit to childhood trauma. And he said, well, that's very interesting because we have someone coming to share an ayahuasca retreat in 5 days, so you can participate if you want. And in that moment, I felt like, wow, okay, I'm really meant to do this. And the way in which the medicine aligned for me and the way in which it continued to align for the last years has always been very synchronistic, has always been very effortless, has always been around me seeing the breadcrumbs, picking them up and walking towards this piece in front of me rather than searching, rather than chasing, rather than forcing. A few years after drinking my first cup of this medicine, I found myself working at an ayahuasca healing center in the Amazon jungle and having access to dozens of ceremonies per month and being able to go really deep in my own work, but also being able to take all my gifts and practices into this whole new space. So supporting people working with plant medicine through the practice of yoga, through the practice of meditation, through the tools of somatic awareness and experiencing. And this is where I really clearly and deeply saw what I spoke to a little bit already, this resonance between these paths from completely different parts of the world. For me, plant medicine has been a life-changing experience, continues to be a tool that keeps giving, where the depth to which I'm moving within myself is always surprising, always taking me to a whole new way of understanding who I am, feeling my life's journey, feeling my soul's journey. A lot of this at first was about understanding trauma and healing trauma and acknowledging trauma and working towards finding compassion, forgiveness. Then it started to be about finding compassion and forgiveness to themes that have been passed on in my family, suddenly including more and more in my most immediate circle, suddenly moving further down and down in the ancestral line and acknowledging, okay, I come from a part of the world that since my country was established in like 960 has been continuously invaded, has been continuously abused, has been continuously brought to a place of poverty, of fighting for survival, of violence, of abandonment. What does that mean for me as someone who's been born there? What does that mean for me as beliefs that I inherit in my DNA by just being born in that particular piece of land geographically. Understanding that and working with these themes has allowed me to really pinpoint a certain reactiveness within myself, or certain habitual way of seeing happenings in my life as this means that, or this will definitely end in that way because it's always been like this. The subtlety of beliefs that I have inherited, that I have carried, that I was brought up in, or stepped into just by going to school in that place, or just by growing up in a certain environment, they were all formulating a sense of a filter separating me from life. And for me, yoga, plant medicine, breathwork, all these incredible practices are all about seeing my filters, seeing the filters that I have here and maybe here, and being willing to peel one at a time with a lot of compassion, with a lot of understanding. Wow, okay, this is how I limit myself. This is what I believe to be true about me, about life. This is an interesting belief that I inherited from my mother, from my father. This is a way in which I react when I'm not in comfort or when I feel unsafe. And meeting myself in all those places of belief, of imposed limitations, of structure, of imprisonment, of attachment, of identity, of roles that I believe I have in this lifetime and have to carry, and being willing to drill underneath that, being willing to consider the possibility that none of those things are true, that none of those things have a meaning, that perhaps underneath that it's something much more translucent, something that I cannot really grasp and name and catch. But when I close my eyes and feel stillness within myself, that's the very place within me that feels like home. That's the place within me that feels like it's wrapped up in all those packages that I inherited, that have been conditioned, that I attach myself to because I like how they sound or look or feel. And yet that which is underneath is simply witnessing me in this dance of life, me in this play of life, me in this chaos and confusion of finding my way back into my heart, finding my way back home. So in everything that I share as a teacher, as a space holder, as a facilitator, is exactly that, the invitation to explore the programming, the invitation to be courageous enough to honestly look in a mirror. And a lot of these practices do exactly that. They hold up a mirror and suddenly you see yourself, whether you like it or not, but you see yourself so clearly. And to be willing to gently start peeling this onion of belief. Okay, this is what I'm attached to. This is what I really don't like. This is my comfort. And to be inquisitive enough and curious enough to explore what's underneath that. And this journey of healing, this journey of coming home into the heart, this journey of dropping down from the head into the body doesn't have to be scary. Yes, it might be intimidating at first to let go of everything we believe to be true or we believe about ourselves. But it's not something that's only limited to a very elitistic small group of spiritual people that are woke and, they're stepping into this spiritual awakening. I think this is essentially human potential. We are all destined to have this experience of realizing, okay, wow, this is what I believe myself to be, and this is what I believe to be true, and yet there is something within me that sparkles up in the moments of stillness, or when I'm in vast nature, suddenly speechless, or when I look at the most magical sunset, or when I look at the stars and have a very, very subtle yet visceral sense of, oh, there's more than me out there. There's something larger than myself out there. And so everyone can have that experience. Everyone is invited to have that experience through being alive. I believe that life is essentially our journey of coming home into remembering that this is happening for us and that we're meant to have this experience to remember who we truly are. And that remembering of who I truly am has got nothing to do with Marta, has got nothing to do with me being a yoga teacher and a facilitator and da. It's just me resting in this place of remembering that I am a loving awareness. And that, yes, might take a while to get to this place of truly being able to lean into this knowing. But this is where the practices are all inclusive for all of us. You start rolling on the mat, or you start simply sitting and closing your eyes and noticing, okay, wow, it's really uncomfortable for me to sit here. What am I going to cook for dinner today? Oh, my knee is aching. And noticing how quickly it is for the mind to give up, right? The mind gives up way quicker than the body. So a lot of people will come to a retreat, or they want to come and work with me and they say, oh, but I'm just really bad at yoga, or, you know, my body is so dense. Great. What a perfect place to start, to honor that you recognize you need this, and yet it's so unfamiliar. Your body is dense, contracted, tense. You're not used to moving it. You're not used to opening it. What a gift to give yourself, to start playing with what it would be like to open your shoulders, what it would be like to find a little bit more flexibility. What would it be like to feel good in your physical body? Which for me has got nothing to do with how we look, and everything with how it feels from inside of the body. You know, like one of my teachers always says, we don't use the body to get into the pose, we use the pose to arrive in the body. And so once you start remembering what it feels to be in here, you can start exploring what's underneath the physical. What it is like to close your eyes and sit in this experience of stillness, even if you really want to check your phone, even if you really think like, oh, this is boring, nothing is happening. Or even if you think, okay, I'm really bad at meditation, I just shouldn't be meditating, I'm just terrible at it. Those are the most fertile grounds to stick to it. And you know, Pema Chodron speaks a lot about us giving up on ourselves. I think this is something very common in the Western society because we are encouraged to be distracted. You have all these fixes, tools, quick things, you know, the phone scrolling. It only asks for 10 seconds of your attention and you're at the next post, next news. Everything is bite-sized, digestible. We never really have space or time or encouragement, unless you are in this environment of meditation, to just sit and be quiet, to carve out some time to be with yourself, and especially in a moment of discomfort, not to go and switch on your phone, not to go and watch Netflix, not to go and eat ice cream, but to be with it. Wow, okay, right now I feel really irritated. How interesting. What has triggered me into this irritation? Or, wow, okay, my lower back is really firing up. What does that mean? Am I sitting too much? Am I not moving? Am I holding something? Kidneys, lower back, fear? Right? And to step into these practices and to step into a simple intention of wanting to align mind, body, heart can be very revolutionary. We are literally going against the grain of what society wants us to do. We are encouraged to be lazy. We are encouraged to be distracted. We are encouraged not to take full ownership for how we feel, but rather go shopping or eat something or, you know, use your phone. And in this practice, you say, no, wait. I want to feel in alignment. I want to take full responsibility for how my body feels. I want to be able to allow myself to feel all the emotions moving through me without having to change how they are or what they are or how I feel them. I want to be able to meet life as it happens because it happens to me. And so in every situation, I recognize an opportunity to rise, to wake up, to open my eyes a little bit more, to learn something new. Let me choose that over a bucket of ice cream, 2 hours on my phone, 3 series of Netflix, and 5 new outfits. Let me just be with it. This is completely revolutionary. This is not how we are taught to live our lives. So stepping into the arena of these practices, choosing to explore what's underneath your most visible, superficial self can be the most revolutionary act we can make in this lifetime. It can be a beginning of something completely different, completely new. And, you know, the beauty of the human potential, I feel, is that it's infinite. We can keep rediscovering ourselves to be something completely different every day. We can suddenly find our creativity. We can suddenly realize, wow, I love singing. I love dancing. Wow, I love painting. I have so much to share with others. I have these gifts that I'm suddenly reclaiming. If we only choose to get to know ourselves, if we only choose to explore something new. So this is the gift of this practice, and this is the invitation of this practice, of all these practices, of yoga, of meditation, of Eastern philosophies, of plant medicine, of the breath. See who you are underneath that which you think you are, and then see what's beyond that, in that empty space that's way beyond everything that we believe to be true and everything that we can name. And how would it feel to live your life every now and then coming back into that place of anchor?